What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All NBA Show, part of the All City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined, finally, by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, it was a long offseason, man. I missed you.
Adam, seriously, man, what the heck? It's like we had this incredible thing going, and I thought you broke up with me. I didn't know what happened, man. Like, I didn't see,
Yeah.
didn't talk to you all summer for the most part. We did the show during the Olympics, which was great, man.
Yeah.
People really into that. It was a great topic, incredible drama there that gave us great storylines. But then, it gets quiet around the NBA until now. But we're ready to go, man. I'm looking forward to doing this again with you and building on what we started last year.
Absolutely. And for me personally, this feels like the start of the NBA season. It wasn't media day for the Denver Nuggets, which happened a couple days ago. It was the start of the All NBA Show. And just to give everybody a heads up, we're going to have an episode this week talking about the Western Conference. We're going to have an episode next week talking about the Eastern Conference. It's kind of a preseason for us, a ramp up, but we will be back on the 14th with our regular scheduled programming live and coming to you. But today, we each putting a list together of the 5 teams in each conference that we thought was most interesting, not necessarily the best, but the most interesting for telling the story of this year. So we're going to get to all 5 of those teams, but we're going to start with the Dallas Mavericks, the reigning Western Conference champions. And typically, Legs, when you get a reigning champion, you run it back, you add a piece here or there, but the Mavericks decided to go a different way. They made major changes, adding Klay Thompson, Najee Marshall, Quentin Grimes, Spencer Dinwiddie. Those are the main moves. So right off the top, what's most interesting about this new look Dallas Mavericks team?
Yeah, look, first I just want to tell everybody kind of how this played out with you and I, like full disclosure. We decided that we wanted to draft like teams that we were interested in, right? This is how we set this up. And I had the first pick in the West. You had the first pick in the East, which we're going to do next week. And so I had first pick in the West. Like, what team is the most interesting, intriguing, exciting, like whatever it be. It's your own personal criteria. And for me, it was Dallas. And that's why I chose them first. And I know a lot of people know that, like, I was riding Dallas pretty hard last year. And look, they made a run all the way to the finals. And I was confident that they possibly had that in them after they made the moves for PJ Washington and Gafford. It just added an element to their team they drastically needed. The chemistry with Luka and Kyrie was great last year.
Yeah.
They clearly came up against the best team in the NBA, and they came up short in the finals. And they went out and, like you said, a lot of teams that, Adam, go through that for the first time and kind of reach that level think, okay, we're very close. Let's run it back and maybe tweak a little bit here or there. They didn't just tweak. They added major components, but I think it's almost not debatable that I think they significantly improved their team. And that's hard to do when you made a run to the finals and got through the Western Conference. It's hard to say you substantially improved. I think they did. And it obviously starts with Klay Thompson and that addition. And I think for me, where I'm looking at is the NBA Finals particularly, but even other times in the postseason for the Mavericks. The guys that were getting the catch and shoot threes on the weak side of the floor after Luka, the magnet that he is, drawing all those defenders and getting the ball out, or Kyrie and what you have to do against him when he gets going. There are shots to be had on the opposite wing and the opposite corner. The guys that were taking those shots last year were not making those shots at a high enough rate to win a championship. Period. Right. Whether that was Josh Green, Derek Jones, whoever was out there, it wasn't good enough. And I think that's what Dallas was looking at, and it was glaring in the NBA Finals, the three-point discrepancy. And look, Boston is, as I know, at another level with the three-point shooting than any team in the league. But the discrepancy was so glaring that I think that's what really hit Dallas hard. And it coincided with some discontent on the part of Klay Thompson in Golden State and the contract situation. And here you go. The perfect storm strikes. This player that I think is a perfect complement to Luka and Kyrie ends up being available. I still think he's got a lot left in the tank when you give him a specific role like he's going to have here. And he is dramatically better and more efficient at the same exact shots that the guys playing that position were getting last year. He doesn't shoot it as well off the move anymore, and he won't be as many opportunities off the move in Dallas because of the way their offense is going to go at him. But so primarily, he's going to be spotted up waiting. And Klay Thompson, when he's spotted up and waiting, still is one of the top shooters in the NBA. And that is now what they've addressed. So let's just start with Clay before we get into some of these other guys. For me, that's a substantial upgrade over what they had at that spot. And that's why I think this is a great move for Dallas.
Dallas's offense is a lot more stagnant than Golden State's. And Klay Thompson, one of the things that made him so valuable was he's really good at moving off ball, getting into open spots. And, that was part of his value. Dallas is a lot more stagnant. To your point, I do think he'll be a lot more set, in the corner, ready to catch and just straight spacing. Do you feel like they're going to start mixing up their style? Does Dallas need to implement more motion into their offense, or is Klay Thompson just going to seamlessly fit into more of a stagnant role?
He's going to fit in. I just don't see them changing much because of the way Luka likes to play. It's what it comes down to. It's the same thing, literally in a lot of the same ways we would have these discussions about James Harden over the years and adapting style. And I'm going, you can't. If James Harden's on the floor, this is your style because that's how he wants to play. And he's not that interested in doing a whole lot if he doesn't have the ball. To my point, look, will they, or to your point, will they add some action for Klay Thompson, like some single double screen action on the baseline where he's coming out off a single double? Yeah. Will they add some flare screen sets that they run that are directed to try to get Klay Thompson shots? Yes. But in terms of the motion and movement that he was used to in Golden State, it's not going to look like that because that requires all 5 players to do that.
Right.
You can't run like a motion type of offense if everybody isn't willing to move. And clearly, Steph Curry, that's a big part of who he is. And as a star player, willing to do that, knowing that he has to do it to separate himself and the problems it creates for defenses when he does it. So that's not what this is going to be. Kyrie moves okay without the ball. I think he'd be more willing to. Luka's not going to do that.
Right.
And so as a result, you're going to operate the way they operate. And that means Klay Thompson, I think the vast majority of his shots are going to be already facing the basket, feet set, ball comes to him, shoot it. Now he'll get some of the action I just described on a minimal level. And then he's going to get some transition opportunities are going to be big. Now, Luka doesn't play at a blazing pace. Kyrie pushed a little bit more. But what Luka does do in his semi sort of early offense, what he does do is come over half court, immediately recognize where somebody is shifting to his side. And because of his size and strength, he can hit a trailing Klay Thompson or hit Klay on the opposite wing and get a shot within 5-6 seconds into the shot clock, even though it wasn't a fast break opportunity because of how much velocity he puts on the ball. So Klay's going to get some transition opportunities, mostly catch and shoot stationary shots, and then they're probably going to put a couple of wrinkles in for him to move without the ball. But it's going to be a dramatic difference of what he's used to. At the same time, I think the overall quality of the shots he gets could actually improve. He might get a higher percentage of like really on balance shots with space. And that's a scary thought for any defense.
The other thing I think about this is it might be, and in fact, I would say it almost certainly is the best spacing Luka has ever played with. I mean, you're talking about Kyrie Irving and Klay Thompson already. That's the top tier, S tier floor spacers. But PJ Washington, obviously Derek Lively's rim pressure and gravity, and then a host of other shooters. So they lose a little defensively, obviously. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I just think in terms of raw offensive spacing, Luka is poised to be MVP this season, in large part because I think the spacing is going to make the game easier offensively than he's ever had it.
Yeah, it's a great point. And the MVP talk going in, I agree with you. A lot of times it takes what happened to him last year and the run that they had late. It sets the stage for the following season. Now, the one thing he's going to have to do that he hasn't done to this point is lead a team probably into the top 3 in the West.
Right.
Like, can he do that? They've been a team that's been, sort of that middle of the pack area in the playoffs in the West. And that's not going to be good enough. Not when you have guys that are going to be on teams that are going to win a ton of games that are going to get talk. Minnesota's going to win a bunch of games. Anthony Edwards is going to get a lot of talk because of that. Jokic is going to continue to get a lot of talk because of that. If the Suns have a better year, you're going to have Kevin Durant, like guys like that will get talk about it. So if you're Luka, even though you might be regarded as best offensive player in the Western Conference, if not the entire league, at the end of the day, if you're winning, 48 to 52 games, and there are teams that are closer to 60 with top tier first team All NBA type players on it, you're going to lose votes to that. So That's the one thing left, I think, right now for Dallas, obviously, other than winning a championship. They have to be better in the regular season to show this, so everybody kind of buys in the whole time. Like, nobody really bought into this team until like March, April this year. It's got to be more of like, okay, right from Jump Street, they look like they're a team that potentially could end up with the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. That's what they should be thinking about, and that's the challenge for Luka, particularly when it comes to the MVP discussion. But let's transition real quick to a couple of these other pieces they added, which I think are significant. Najee Marshall's in a very significant addition to them because of the way he defends, can also shoot the basketball, but he's big, he's physical, he's got a defensive mindset. They had Derrick Jones in that spot a year ago, who's an elite defender and more of a rim runner, lob catcher, every now and then make a three. Najee Marshall's going to be a better three-point shooter. You're not going to give up much defensively, what you had over Derrick Jones with him on the floor. Very important. And then a sneaky addition, Spencer Dinwiddie, going back to Dallas to give them, another like big-time NBA veteran guard, combo guard, come off their bench and be able to help organize their team and run the show a little bit more, so that when Luka's off the floor and it's Kyrie's show, you're not still just running everything from the point in terms of attack. You can put the ball in Spencer Dinwiddie's hands and let Kyrie you create a little bit better opportunities off the ball first before he gets it. So I think that's a very underrated acquisition. Now we're going to see what is it. He's only 31, but let's see what Spencer Dinwiddie has left. He didn't necessarily light the world on fire anywhere last year. So let's see what he's got left. But I think that's a great addition for a team. If you're talking about playing 16, 18, 20, 22 minutes, Adam, I think that's a great pickup.
Are we sure he's better than Jaden Hardy? I mean, they're different, right? They bring different skill sets, and we're going to talk about Quentin Grimes, who's another different guard that they can run to that rotation. But Spencer Dinwiddie, I'm concerned about the year he had last year, and I'm concerned about where he fits into this equation. So Jaden Hardy played an important role for them. Does he take a step back, or do you feel like he's a guy that maybe by the end of the year he's overtaken the minutes from a Dinwiddie?
Yeah, the two guys you mentioned, Hardy, who's been there and is young and got a lot of electric type talent, I still think is going to be inconsistent enough to sort of dissuade Jason Kidd from going in that direction. He's going to get a lot of run probably the first half of the season. And Dinwiddie being this vet, there might be stretches where maybe Dinwiddie's got lesser role in the rotation because they're giving Hardy more run. I still think at the end of the day, a team that's going to be vying for a championship, they might have more trust in a veteran guard. If once the smoke clears, I could be wrong. Jaden Hardy might take off this year, and maybe those are his minutes. Dinwiddie will still play, and he'll still be in the rotation. And then Quentin Grimes, look, he's a guy I really liked with the Knicks, and he can really shoot the basketball. And question is going to be with all the guys we just mentioned, like, where are the minutes to be had?
I'm surprised more people aren't high on Quentin Grimes. When we get, back into the rhythm of the show, we're going to be doing our guys. Spoiler alert, Quentin Grimes is going to be on the my guys list for sure. I love this guy. Obviously concerned about the injuries, and then just where does he fit in? Because we just mentioned now he's competing with minutes with two guys we just mentioned. Does he break into that? What are the opportunities he gets? How consistent can he be is a big question. But you glossed over something with Derrick Jones Jr. and said that he was more of a lob threat. This is why I loved him with Dallas. Dallas had multiple guys that they can run pick and pop with or pick and roll with. They now have a much better spacing, and you just run it with Lively over and over again. But I do wonder if part of the appeal for Dallas last year was they had versatility for pick and roll. And this year, I think they just have a little bit less. Najee Marshall more just going to be in the corner shooting those threes. So do you think that's a big deal that they lost one of their sort of weird pick and roll partners for Luka?
I think more so, honestly, in his ability to finish and transition and some of the stuff that they could do early with him running to the rim than the half-court pick and roll stuff. They still have Gafford and Lively, so they still have two legitimate rim runners on that stuff. But I think what it came down to, look, they finally ran into a team that did a great job at taking away the lob. And when you took that away from Dallas with the lack of the supplemental three-point shooting that they had at the time, they were exposed offensively. And I think that was the trade-off they made. Okay, we still have lob threats. We do not have enough shooting. We've got to address that, and that's what they did. And it's not just Clay. It's, Grimes can really shoot it as well. Najee Marshall can step out and shoot it, but it starts with Klay Thompson. So I think that is like sort of the metrics they were using in looking at their team. They think now they're probably more complete because they've addressed that shooting need. They still have athletes on their front line, and then they've got the 2 stars that everything revolves around.
Last question I have on the Mavericks. Luka Doncic last year was on a heater, 38% from 3. That's an outlier for his career. And Legs, he took almost twice as many step back threes as anyone else in the league. Almost twice as many. That's his shot. And last year it was working for him. But are we sure? That's a shot to me that you get in a rhythm and you have a good year, but I'm not necessarily sure that he's going to repeat that. Where do you fall on his 3-point shooting?
Yeah, you know what's interesting about him? I always made this reference to him. Like, one thing I respected about Luka was he doesn't make any bones about the fact that when the game starts, he's going to test himself first. Like, that's just
right.
that's who he is now. And he's obviously going to make a lot of plays for people throughout the game, and he's going to, he's an incredible passer and facilitator. But I love the fact that Luka comes out every night, and like when most guys that are star scorers kind of dip their toe in the water, Luka just dives in. Yeah. Right, he just dives in like cousin Edey, right, in Christmas Vacation, and he's got the water wings on and the goggles, and he's just jumping into the deep end right off the bat. And my point with that is he'll take like 3 step back threes in the first 5 minutes of the game. Yeah. So some of that number I think is inflated because of the way he starts games. Maybe he wants to look at that a little bit more, and like maybe we don't need to do that as often. I hear what you're saying. I think that shot can be fickle. And if it leaves him at the wrong time, it's a major problem for the Mavericks because of his reliance upon it. Yeah. And it can hurt their offense at times. I think it's a fair point. Can he tighten that up a little bit, be a little bit more selective in when he takes those? Knowing that it's an enormous weapon for their team and for him because he can get it off whenever he wants against any defender, even in a tight box. But maybe be a little bit more selective so the shot quality goes up.
Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them a perfect choice for all outdoor activities. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. They probably have a style in your favorite team's colors, no matter what type of sunglasses you're looking for. So check them out right now. I've got sunglasses in my car. I've got them in my office, and I have them at home. That way, no matter where I'm at, I can always get my pair of Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use our code AC35 for 35% off your polarized sunglasses. I'm telling you, winter coming up. If you're a skier, you're doing some outdoor activities, you're going to want to get some polarized sunglasses, and you're going to want to support the show. So head to shadyrays.com and use that code AC35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Also want to tell you about Game Time. We're just a couple of weeks away from the NBA season tipping off. You want to get your tickets at Game Time. They have an incredible interface to use where everything is so simple. On the front page, you can hit that all-in pricing so you don't get surprised with all of these fees and taxes and everything else at the end. It'll just tell you the price, the final price of your ticket right there on the front screen. You can also search around the arena. You can look at the map view. You can experience what it looks like from your seat with the little 3D visual view from every single ticket. And the best deal of all is you get those flash deals and last minute ticket pricing. So maybe you look at a game, it's sold out. You head on down, you park, you know the confidence you can have going to the arena without a ticket. You just hop on Game Time 5 minutes before, and you're going to see those prices drop. Last minute ticket deals, flash deals, really incredible and a great way for you to sort of find the event you're looking for, the NBA game you're looking for. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ALLNBA, that's ALLNBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code ALLNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
All right, next team we want to talk about is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who usually it's quiet, right, the weekend before media day. But the Minnesota Timberwolves, like the Dallas Mavericks, make it to the conference finals last year, best year they've had in a long time, and yet they still mix it up and make a major move, sending Karl-Anthony Towns to the Knicks, bringing in Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. Before we dive into the whole team, what do you make of this move for Minnesota?
Man, oh man! First of all, I'm not shocked. I mean, I just there was something about the chemistry all along with the Karl-Anthony Towns situation. Pairing with Gobert, I think at times, I think the chemistry with Anthony Edwards, I question it a little bit. I always go back to the night that Karl-Anthony Towns had that, 60 plus point scoring game. And I thought it was one of the oddest games I'd watched all year, just
Really
the lack
was.
of energy amongst the team while a guy was doing that. And of course they lost the game. And so it was bizarre to me all year, kind of like what was going on there. And his name came up a lot. And so I wasn't shocked, first of all. Was I shocked that it was the Knicks? A little bit. I didn't see that coming at all. I didn't know that they would get into those sweepstakes. They went ahead and rolled the dice. We'll get into the Knicks next week and their end of it. In looking at Minnesota, I just think they wanted more versatility offensively and another, more dynamic focal point player with the ball offensively, which is what Julius Randle is. That's what he represents, more so than Towns. Towns is a great stretch shooter for a big man. He can post up some. He just done less and less of that each season. He can, pick and dive a little bit and score in the paint. He's a really good offensive player. But I think at times the spacing that they were looking for with those two guys on the court wasn't necessarily always what they wanted. Julius Randle's a guy's a little bit different, man. You put the ball in his hands and he can win a matchup. He can control the ball. He can isolate. He can back you down in the post. He's just a totally different offensive player in the way he operates than Karl-Anthony Towns. And it's clearly what they wanted to do to give themselves some versatility. And I think a big part of this was picking up Donte DiVincenzo along with that. And the year that he had, particularly the second half of the year and the postseason that he had, the threat that he has become as a shooter, that's something else that Minnesota was looking at. Again, the 3-point discrepancy with them and the team that won it all. A lot of these teams are using Boston as a barometer. Minnesota needed to close that gap. I think they did it by adding Donte DiVincenzo and giving them a little bit more firepower there. So overall, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know yet, Adam, if I like this more for Minnesota. I need to see it in a situation like this because this is a dramatic change in the way that you're operating your offense between Karl-Anthony Towns and Julius Randle, the way those guys play. So I want to see it for a little bit first, but I think the fact that you got back also big-time shooting and Randle's versatility offensively, I think this might end up being a net positive for the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Randle's versatility offensively. Is he that versatile? I feel like he likes the ball in his hand. He's not necessarily a great three-point shooter, but he can become an addictive three-point shooter. He'll take them in bunches. Because I look at this team and I go, this is what's so interesting about the NBA in the parity era, which is what I believe we're in. We're in the parity era we'll see how long it lasts. But there's a lot of good teams. And they were the Twin Towers lineup. They were the two bigs, but Karl-Anthony Towns could get out of the way. And I think to his credit, sacrificed a lot to be sort of a stretch player. And you mentioned not posting up as much. I think that was part of the sacrifice. Julius Randle, though, what does he do when he's alongside Rudy Gobert? What is his role in that ecosystem?
Well, what I meant by versatility, first of all, is the fact that he is a significantly better ball handler, operator.
Yeah.
He can win matchups that way. He can create his own shot, create his own offense. Karl-Anthony Towns wasn't going to do that. He can score and he can light it up, but it's going to be very simple stuff that he's going to do that. Julius Randle can be a little bit more complex in how he operates and keep his handle. He's a better passer. So he can also make plays off the dribble in traffic. So I think that's really what I meant, just in terms of a guy that can be more of a focal point in giving the ball first as an initiator. Let Julius Randle create something here as he crosses half court with a live dribble and keep his dribble, run some action, and get something good out of it. That's really what I meant by versatility. I wasn't necessarily talking about, hey, he can score from all over the floor. Right. That's not really what I meant. I just meant in terms of the way he can control a possession is more, to me, impactful in that way than Karl-Anthony Towns was. So now we got to see what does it look like opposite Rudy Gobert, because he's not as consistent or as good a three-point shooter as Karl-Anthony Towns.
Right.
Probably takes more that he's baited into than he should.
Definitely.
That's something that he needs to probably tighten up. But there's going to be opportunities when he's got the basketball and operating, and you're going to have to send somebody because he gets a favorable matchup with a guy on his back that he can back down. Yeah. That creates opportunities for Rudy Gobert to run, get on the offensive glass, to weak side slash, and get the ball back. I think there's going to be opportunities there for them to do some interior passing together and beat teams that way. So, again, I need to see this. before I really can have an evaluation, because this is dramatically different. I'll say the same thing about the Knicks. I want to see what that looks like and Towns' role with those guys and the way Brunson likes to play and how much he dominates the basketball at the guard spot, which Towns didn't have to worry about as much in Minnesota. He's going to have to worry about that now, the point guard that controls the ball to that extent. So he's going to have a massive adjustment in New York as well. I think both situations, we got to let it play out for a little bit before we can honestly predict what this is going to look like in March and April.
This is why I love this trade, is because that's how I feel about both sides. I think I'm higher on it for the Knicks than I am for Minnesota. In fact, I'm pretty certain of it. But both teams, it's like, you know what? It's fun. I want to see what it becomes, and it's exciting. And I'm not exactly 100% confident in any direction. I will say, what I like about this new Wolves team is Chris Finch coached Julius Randle when he was an assistant coach in New Orleans, so he has some familiarity with him. And what I like is that now I'm not certain what the closing lineup is for Minnesota. And I think it needs to be 3 or 4 different closing lineups based on different matchups. And you're going to have Mike Conley at point guard, DiVincenzo, Edwards, McDaniels, Gobert. That would be more of your traditional spacey lineup that a lot of teams go to, where McDaniels is your 4 and you've got good spacing, probably the best spacing of this, Edwards era. But you might also go with Conley, Edwards at the 2, McDaniels at the 3, Randle, Gobert. That lineup is, I think, what people will pencil in as a starting lineup. But that one, to me, is it going to be the closing lineup against everybody with the 2 bigs? Things are a little more muddled, not great spacing. What do you make of that? The idea that they might have to be different every night in how they close.
Well, and look, I think there's going to be plenty of nights where they close with Julius Randle and Naz Reid.
Yep, that's the other option.
And Gobert not on the floor. I think that you're going to see that a lot. One of the things I like about their team now, and I'm just looking at their depth chart on paper, if you just ran these 2 units together, you've got 2 really solid units, I believe. Conley, Edwards, McDaniels, Randle, and Gobert, if that's your starting lineup, which I think it will be. Then you got Dillingham, DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Naz Reid, and probably like Joe Ingles, maybe somebody like that in the 4 spot. Those are 2 really solid units, man, especially if Dillingham is ready to go right away, which I think he's going to be able to score immediately in this league. He just has a lot of creativity with his handle and his shooting. He gets off the floor and gets it off quickly for a smaller guard. I think Dillingham was a steal for them to get him on draft night. In that trade with San Antonio. So if he particularly is ready to go from the beginning, I just think this is a team now with a lot of depth and options and how you want to approach and attack certain teams and how you want to close games. So I think I can sit here today and logically make an argument that I think Minnesota improved themselves.
Did they improve themselves against Denver? Because this is one of the things that I think is so interesting. I think they were a team designed to beat Denver. Denver's coming off, Tim Conley saw the ascension. They win a title. And you go with that 2 big lineup, and Karl-Anthony Towns honestly guarded the playoffs last year. Karl-Anthony Towns won that series, I thought, for Minnesota, and how he guarded Jokic, how he scored. And now you look at it, and they're more like a traditional team, like most other teams. They're not a curveball team. Randall's kind of small. Naz Reid is one of Jokic's easiest matchups. So I think you take out what worked against Denver, and maybe it makes them better against Oklahoma City and Dallas and more teams across the league. But what about the Denver matchup?
Yeah, no, that's fair probably with regard to Denver. I'm not sure that Minnesota probably looks at Denver right now as the marquee team in the West. That's the barometer and the gauge of who you're comparing yourself to. And I think a lot of teams do operate that way, and I think you have to if you're in the mix. Like if you're a bottom feeder, you're not thinking about any other team. You're just improving. Like how do we get better? But if you're a team that's already in the mix, you are gauging yourself by the rest of the conference and the rest of the league at the top and thinking like, what do they have we don't, and how do we match up with that? I'm not sure that it's Denver is the team anymore for them to look at. I think you would look at a team like Oklahoma City. You would look at a team in their additions. You would look at a team like Dallas. I think these are probably the teams now that they're looking at more so. And I think that they are going to be just fine with regard to those matchups.
Let's move on now to the Phoenix Suns. They're another team that has some really interesting new pieces. Number 1, Mike Budenholzer, brand new coach, brand new system, brand new voice there. But they also add Tyus Jones, Mason Plumlee, Monte Morris, the marquee names that were added this year. So first of all, Mike Budenholzer, very different coach. What impact do you think he is going to have on this team that really offensively, at least, has a lot of players that really enjoy isolation and simplified offense?
I think one thing you're going to get out of him, Mike Budenholzer is going to have a level of confidence and stability and self-assuredness in this spot that previous coaches have not had. And certainly Frank Vogel did not have. And I thought he probably had to coach that team in that way. It's hard to coach when you kind of feel like from day one, people are already questioning you. And I think Frank Vogel, much as I respect him, I think he battled that probably all year. And it's tough to make your voice carry weight. I think Mike Budenholzer comes in and he's just got a different personality and demeanor that way. He's a great communicator with his players. He can be tough when he needs to be. He's a champion. And I think he's also a guy that the metrics indicated, both what he did in Atlanta and Milwaukee, Mike Budenholzer knows how to improve teams on both ends of the floor. And he's going to be able to do that. So I think that the presence that he carries and just his demeanor, stature in the league, the way that he communicates with players, I think that's going to be something that Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and Bradley Beal are going to respect more than they did last year. And I think that's an important first step. Then the other components are, now, does he get a healthy team? Frank Vogel didn't get a healthy team. And it, in some ways not fair to judge him in that regard. Those guys did not play a lot together. What does it look like? They didn't have a point guard, which we were all saying all year was glaring. You can't just run Bradley Beal and Devin Booker up the floor and take turns and go run ball screen when they're not comfortable top-tier playmakers and expect that to go well. So now they go and they add Tyus Jones. That's something Mike Budenholzer has that Frank Vogel did not have. So I think those are important. They also added Mason Plumlee. I think is going to be a really nice addition up front. I think he takes the Landale minutes and in a lot of ways probably even is going to be better in that spot. And I think you mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned Monte Morris, but you might have. They pick up Monte Morris, a little bit of a sleeper pickup. And then Ryan Dunn is an exciting one for me, a rookie.
Rookie.
I just think his defensive prowess, this is one of the best perimeter defenders coming into the league this year. And they need it. They need some toughness and length. And I don't know if he's going to get minutes or crack the rotation or not. He's just someone I think to keep on people's radar. He cannot shoot. Yeah. And so the offensive part of it will, if it ever comes, is going to come much later. But that dude can lock up, and he's got long arms, and he can disrupt and take some of the pressure off some of their stars on the perimeter. So he's just another guy that's kind of floating out there that probably won't play early, but I'm wondering if at some point he starts to find himself inserted in there with some minutes because of the way he can guard.
One of the questions you had with this team was, one, ball handling and just point guard play. Booker had to take on a lot of those responsibilities. More so, I think he's a great and has made himself into a great playmaker, but I think his natural role is more secondary playmaker. And so now you bring in Tyus Jones and Monte Morris, who, by the way, is like the B version of Tyus Jones. They're both very similar in what they do. They don't turn it over. They set the table well, and they shoot on the catch. To me, having two of those guys that's why I'm actually buying the Phoenix Suns this year. Unlike previous years where I felt like they had these fatal flaws, this year I think they're going to get closer to the potential of their big three, because one of the things that happened, Legs, was you double Booker, you double Bill, you double KD, and swinging that ball around, and you have to go through a Royce O'Neal or you have to go through an Okogie. Now you're going to a guy that's a knockdown shooter in Tyus Jones. Those rotations, and not only a knockdown shooter, a guy that knows how to generate advantages off of that. You doubled, everybody's in scramble. Tyus Jones is going to make you pay, whether through short scoring or collapsing the defense further to create better looks. And that's why I think that this team is more complete than they have been in the Kevin Durant era.
Totally agree. They went out and not only did they get a point guard, they got a guy that I believe has led the league in assist turnover ratio like 5 times. Like you're talking about a guy that just does not turn the ball over. It's been a problem for them. And justifiably so, when you're asking Devin Booker and Bradley Beal, who are natural raw scoring talents, to go ahead and set the table for people and control the ball and see everybody. That's not in their nature. They've gotten better at it, and that's good. It's nice to have a 2-guard that can go do that. That should not be their primary responsibility on their plate. You got to get Tyus Jones. He can do that. He can make people better. He'll find people and knock down shots at a high rate off of the star talent. Very, very important acquisition in picking him up. So I'll end my thoughts on them with this. I did a segment for NBA Today after the Olympics on ESPN where we talked about the 3 veteran leaders and stars of the Olympic team, right? LeBron, KD, and Curry. and how each of them had significant impacts on them winning the gold medal. And who would that benefit the most in terms of their team coming out of that? And I said Phoenix.
I agree.
And I said the reason is because, number one, Devin Booker getting universally praised the way that he did and being called out by Steve Kerr,
deserved it,
out by his teammates for being the quote unsung MVP of the team.
Yep.
That is going to have a lot of weight in how Devin Booker feels about himself and some of the ways in which he was given credit for playing defense, pressuring the ball, getting, less shots, but shooting a really high percentage from the field. So he didn't have to be a volume shot taker and still doing his job. I think that's going to bode well for him in the way he views himself and the way he views his impact on the game in other areas going into this season. And for Durant, to still be able to do what he did at his age and it's been a rough ride here, man, for Kevin Durant since he left Golden State. And I think to be able to do that and start to feel some love again from people is important coming into this season because your talent is undeniably still there. So I think this is the team. When I look at the Lakers or the Warriors, where those other guys are going, LeBron and Curry, and I look at this team, Adam, I look at the two stars from Phoenix, and I say, man, they have so much more left to grab as a unit than the Lakers or the Warriors.
Yeah.
I think we've seen the best of those teams.
I agree.
We have not seen the best of this Phoenix Suns group, and I think that could be coming. And I think what happened in the Olympics, what happened over the summer, could help kickstart that at the beginning of the year.
I also like their depth for a team that didn't, that was a concern. Not a lot of money to spend. You're going to have to work on the margins. But Mason Plumlee and Jusuf Nurkic, that's an appropriate allocation of resources to your center position. Nurkic is a very good, not great, but very good starting center. He can do a lot of things. He can pass. He can defend. He can really rebound. Mason Plumlee is he can run that triple handoff game as well. So you talk about, you got some shooters, what kind of offense you're going to have. You have two guys that can make smart plays on pick and roll, short rolls, and on dribble handoffs. And I just look at that and I go, that's the appropriate amount of depth to get through a Western Conference.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next team, which is the Memphis Grizzlies. This team's really interesting for a variety of reasons. 51-31 2 years ago. Their star was rising. They looked like they were there for a while. Obviously, some injuries pop up. Ja Morant has some turmoil, and you lose a year. So the real question is, are they able to pick up where they left off? We've seen that. Teams have a down year, and then they come back, and they're just right back where they were. Or is there too much turmoil? And speaking of turmoil, G.G. Jackson, Vince Williams now out. They have a handful of guys, Luke Kennard, some guys that have been dealing with injuries. They're coming into the year with, I think, 9 or 10 healthy bodies. I don't even know how they're going to get through camp. So I look at that and I go, are they the same team as last year, or injuries already making them a little bit thin?
All right, there are X factors, and then are the Memphis Grizzlies, which might be the biggest X factor I've seen from a team standpoint going into the season that I can remember. You're talking about a team that was off the radar entirely last year. And just looking at these game totals, Ja Morant, 73 games missed. Desmond Bane missed 40 games. Marcus Smart missed 62 games. Brandon Clark missed 76 games. Luke Kennard missed 43 games. Right all down the list. So you look at what they did last year, and it was literally a non-existent season. And so now you come back the following year and you go, you just added Ja Morant to the Western Conference. You just added, hopefully, a healthy Marcus Smart to the Western Conference, a healthy Desmond Bane, a healthy Luke Kennard, like Jaren Jackson, who missed almost 20 games. You look at that lineup and that group and the way they can play on both ends of the floor, and you say, this is a team that has a chance to upset the apple cart. Like, the range for this team is greater than any team in the Western Conference. Meaning, would you be shocked if Memphis ended up in the top 4 in the Western Conference? I would not be. No. I also wouldn't be shocked if they were 8 to 10.
Yeah.
So because of whatever, they don't capture that chemistry, or there's more injuries, or whatever it may be. So the range is broad, man. The ceiling and floor are really far apart with this team. But it's exciting to think about what it could be if it clicks and they stay healthy because of the talent level and how unique Ja Morant is and what he does to defenses and the way that he plays. There's really nobody else quite like him in the NBA that does that. So I'm excited. I'm glad that we put this team on the list because I think that this is one of the most fascinating teams in the league, if not the most fascinating in terms of intrigue, what it looks like as we start the season.
Talk about X factors. They're also starting a 7'4" center, or likely to start, in Zach Edey. And this is why there's so much mystery to him. He's obviously a good player. He was dominant at the college level. He's 7'4". He has limitations, but this is a team that probably makes up for a lot of those limitations. Jaren Jackson Jr., floor spacer. Ja Morant now has this like giant anchor in the center that occupies somebody, whether for rebounding purposes or role purposes. So what do you make of them relying so heavily on Zach Edey? Because behind him, I mean, it's basically he has to start because I don't know what the other options are going to be.
Yeah, there's not much there behind him. Look, when I drafted him, he's sort of an unknown for me. When I saw him in college and I saw him with some of the workout stuff that he did, my question was always, how does a guy like that transition from end to end in the NBA and be effective? Because he sort of plods.
Yeah.
Once he gets down there, even at the NBA level, if you give Zach Edey the ball in the post and you want to play him straight up, Zach Edey's going to score on a lot of dudes in the NBA right now because of his size, strength. He's sort of got a nasty edge to him, so he likes contact, and he's just got a great touch.
Great
got
touch,
a great touch with his short range jumper, his little jump hook that he's got.
Yeah,
he can drop step to either hand. Like he'll score on dudes. You give him single coverage. My question is like, if you want to play a little bit more up tempo, or teams want to take it off the glass and push it. Watching Zach Edey, if he's in the paint offensively, or if he goes for an offensive rebound, or if he misses a post shot, that ball comes off the glass. What impact is he going to have defensively? That's what I need to see more of. There's no question in my mind he's going to be fine offensively for the most part. I mean, look, if he's really good in one-on-ones, now he's going to have to navigate how to play out of double teams and at a different level. These aren't small guys coming to double team you. These are 6'8" dudes with long wingspans, and it's going to be much harder to make the passes he made in college when he had 3 guys around him. This is going to be different. Well, that's down the road. Initially, I just want to see, can he change ends of the floor and play the way that Memphis wants to play when they're at their best, which is fast.
Yeah.
That's when Memphis is really, really hard to stop. How does Zach Edey play into that? I'm very curious to see it.
I remember, I think it was Steve Kerr who traded for Shaq in Phoenix, years ago. And it was 7 seconds or less. They said, okay, now it's 7 seconds or Shaq. And it almost reminds me of that, where it's like, we're going to have a transition offense. We're running fast, but if not, the big fella kind of just plows down the middle and anchors clear space in the paint. We'll see if it works out that way. But I'm with you. When you go through the teams, especially in the Western Conference, that have the most wide range of outcome, I don't know if I would go number 1 with them. Maybe I think they probably would, but San Antonio and the next team we're going to talk about, which is Denver, all of these teams are kind of more of a mystery. Even the Clippers you could throw in there, more of it with the Kawhi news, more of a mystery than than anything. And you're just kind of throwing a dart here. But the Denver Nuggets won a championship 2 years ago. Very strange offseason for them. KCP is out the door. He was a free agent. He signs with Orlando. You elevate Christian Brown into a starting role, but then you bring in Russell Westbrook and Dario Saric. What do you make of the Denver Nuggets?
Well, unlike the 4 teams that we've discussed to this point, I would have a very difficult time making an argument that they're better.
Yeah.
That's a hard argument to make with this group, and for a variety of reasons. First, I didn't love the way Jamal Murray's season ended. There has to be a health component with him and a consistency component with him this year, and you need to see it in the first half of the year. Not just think like all year if there's things going on. Well, we just got to get him healthy for the playoffs. I just think that's not a formula for Jamal Murray this year. I think he needs to get back to that all-star caliber guard, night in, night out. Be there, stay healthy, be consistent. Very important. And if that happens over the first 25, 30 games, and I'm seeing that, I think because of the greatness of Jokic, the chemistry that they have, how well coached they are, I'm still going to have the Denver Nuggets absolutely in the mix to win the Western Conference. So I think a lot of it's going to depend on that. That's one reason why right now going in, I can't say that I feel like they've improved, because he needs to show me something along those lines. And then, you lose KCP. a glue defensive player, a big-time catch-and-shoot three-point shooter, tough, clutch, all those things. And I like Christian Brown a lot, but he's going to be elevated to that spot now. And I think physically he's going to be fine in competing defensively. He's a strong, athletic kid, and he likes to play defense. They'll be okay there. Maybe you lose a little bit in terms of the metrics. I don't know, man. He's really good defensively. The consistency and inconsistency with the shot is concerning in that spot. Right. So that's something now that's going to be in his lap every night. That's got to improve. So I don't know. So as going in, I can't say that's an improvement, particularly in that spot. And then just looking at their overall depth and adding Russell Westbrook, I got to be honest with you, that was one of the most shocking additions to any team I've ever seen. Because I'm thinking about Denver, the way they play, the amount of read and react that you have to do playing with Jokic and the way that the offense runs and how Westbrook likes to play. Now, there are some things he's going to be rewarded with the passing of Jokic, and some of Westbrook's weak side slashing is going to come into play. Jokic will find him late, and Westbrook likes doing that more than ever. Yeah. But the shots he's going to get, the clean looks he gets from the perimeter, and we both know, like Russell Westbrook right now shooting a three-point shot is the equivalent of a turnover. There's no reason to take the shot. So he get those in this offense, Adam. So I don't know that I can make an argument of like that's an improvement for them when those minutes last year coming off the bench were Christian Brown's minutes. Now they're Russell Westbrook's. And just I'm not saying Christian Brown's is as good a player as Russell Westbrook, clearly, but the role and the fit and what you're asked to do in whatever minutes those are, now they're Russell Westbrook's in this offense that is just so seemingly not tailor-made to what he does. So he's going to have to prove that too. So there's a lot of things going on. I don't know that the Saric thing does much for me. I don't know that that's going to be a factor for them. So look, I'm not saying I'm down on them. I'm just saying there's a lot of questions with this team as you aptly put it in setting this up.
Anytime you analyze a team, there's the core of it, and it's Jokic, that's Murray, that's Aaron Gordon, that's Michael Porter. And I think everybody agrees wherever you fall, even on the Murray piece of it, that's a great core. You're starting from the top. And then there's the margins, how you fill it out. And what you're talking about is the margins of this team are more concerning and more mysterious than they were the previous couple of years, where you kind of knew that's a good supporting cast and we know what they do. Let me ask you if you think this is important, though, because at Media Day, and I know this to be true, Westbrook said, I am here to push Jamal Murray and to make him the best he can be. And he has a lot more to grow, and I'm going to make sure that he gets there. And I honestly believe, you mentioned Jamal Murray's inconsistency. I honestly believe that the Nuggets, for all the great things they have going on, a great unselfish culture, guys playing the right way and all this stuff, I think they have lacked a guy that will call other guys out, and especially the best players. Do you think, and Westbrook's obviously a guy with a great stature, he's loud, he's vocal. Do you think this is a real thing? You've been on teams. It's a real thing of just having somebody that has the clout and gravitas to hold everyone accountable, especially your best players.
Yes, it's important. Now, the question is, how much weight will that carry and how loud will his voice register coming to a team that's already won a championship, that's got a core group together, everything's been, for the most part, pretty smooth sailing in terms of chemistry. They play hard. They play the right way. Mike Malone already is that voice to hold guys accountable. He's not afraid to say things at press conferences and challenge his team. I love that about Mike Malone. So there's a lot of that there already, and they've won, and they seem like they like the way their locker room dynamic works. They like that. Jokic is sort of the quiet leader, the great player that's a little bit more sublime. Michael Porter Jr., quiet dude. Aaron Gordon, not super vocal in that way. They show up, they're professional. That's the way they lead. And then Mike Malone is like the voice. So I don't know. I think it's important, but the question is, do they already have those things where Westbrook, that won't carry a lot of weight?
I don't think they did.
I thought you were going to say something different just now.
Okay.
The way you were starting that out, Russell Westbrook, about a team needing, and then you went down that road. I thought you were going to say needing a guy that they just added that there's no question in my mind would cut off his left arm to win.
Yeah.
Okay. That you can't deny that about Russell Westbrook. I always use the expression, he leaves more skin on the floor than anybody out there.
Yeah, it's true.
I will say it tailed off a little bit the last couple of years because of age and just attrition in terms of he'll take a little bit plays off defensively now and turn his head a little bit, get beat on a back cut, like whatever. More than he did, but all players do that at that stage. But when it's time and the lights come on at 7:30 or whatever time tip-off is, and it's time to play, Russell Westbrook is coming to play every single night with the same energy, the same adrenaline, and the same want to. Yeah. And I think that is I thought that's what you were going to say. And I was going to follow it up by saying, of all the things that you bring in with Russell Westbrook, that to me will be the most positive contribution he's going to have to this team. That dude competes. He loves basketball and he loves it every night. And that is very important to add when you're trying to like regain what you had, which was the top of the food chain status in the West. And right now, I don't think people feel that way about Denver. Westbrook can give you some of that swagger, toughness. He will talk the whole game to the opponent. He's gonna play as hard as he can for 48 minutes every second he's out there. That is absolutely a tangible benefit to a team, and he's bringing that for sure. And I think as a result, look, you're gonna have to live with some of the turnovers and live with some of the missed threes, and even he doesn't finish even as well with the rim anymore. And you're gonna be frustrated with that at times as a Denver fan. But one thing you're going to absolutely know every night when you leave the arena, like that dude is guaranteed for the next 2.5 hours what that looks like. And that's a compliment because you can't say that about a lot of star players in this league. You absolutely can say that about Russell Westbrook.
I think that's part of what I'm talking about, though. And when we talk about Jamal Murray's inconsistency, he's been great in pressure moments and he's been great in big games, but he hasn't always been great throughout the course of the year. And for Russell Westbrook, he approaches October and November the same way he approaches April and May. And I think that's part of the injection of seriousness and intensity that can be a positive. But of course, it comes attached to a guy who takes a lot of shots, doesn't shoot the ball well, and really changes the texture. So they're, to me, right there with Memphis in terms of teams. If you told me they won the Western Conference or, we're in the top 2 or 3 in the regular season, I'd say that's where I expect them to be. They've got the MVP. But if you told me this year became more tumultuous and this team was more up and down and things, I'd be like, yeah, I could see that too. And I could see them being on the road in the first round for a playoff series. So all of that's on the table. We didn't get to, let's just give a couple honorable mentions. We don't even have to talk about them, but very narrowly missing this list for me is the Sacramento Kings. They probably could have been on this one, but you add DeMar DeRozan, they already had a system. I'm just really quickly, if you have one thought on them, because I find them to be another team that I would not be surprised if they make a step up, and I wouldn't be surprised if DeRozan kind of changes things in a way that just makes everything neutral.
Yeah, it's another situation where you're going to have a benefit that he brings, and then you're going to have something that we're going to have to see how it fits. Benefit is DeMar DeRozan has a ton of important playoff experience. And he's a guy that can make really difficult shots against any defense when you have to have it. And if he gets cooking, he can toast any defender in this league. But he's an acquired taste with how he plays, and your system was different. It was predicated on a whole lot of ball reversals, a ton of dribble handoffs with Domantas Sabonis being basically your point guard at the top of the key, and a lot of weak side cuts, read and react stuff, playing out of his ball handling ability, playing out of the speed and quickness and ball screen ability of De'Aaron Fox. Now it's going to get to a guy that's on the wing that he likes to put it down. He's going to catch it. He's going to stare at you. He's going to stare at the floor. He's going to jab, and then he's going to start to go into his mix.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's different. And now we got to see, like, what do they have in mind? To what extent is he willing to adjust? We don't know that yet. And what is the plan? What is Mike Brown's plan to use him? I know I talked to Mike Brown out in Vegas Summer League. He was thrilled with this, and he and I talked for a while about it, and I told him I agreed. I think it was worth the roll of the dice to add a player like this as a proven commodity in the playoffs that can flat out get you 30 in an important game against really tough defenders, to give them an additional boost to Fox and Sabonis, because Sabonis at times could be bottled up offensively against certain defenses in the playoffs. That's not the case with DeMar DeRozan. So while the style is different, what they need and what they need in big spots, they just addressed. And so now let's see how Mike Brown can make it all work.
Just so everybody knows, the Oklahoma City Thunder was not on our list. I think they're the number 1 team in the West. I think they're going to win the West by 5 or 6 games. I think they're phenomenal, and I think they're probably most likely to come out of the West. but I almost have less mystery with them. I think they're just going to be really good and really consistent. And if there's one other team, New Orleans, I'm not buying it. I don't know, what's their center position going to be, but they're certainly on my honorable mentions list because I just find them a very interesting team. And Zion, we've seen some of the pictures. If you're into muscle watch in the offseason, he looks good. So we'll see if he has kind of a step-up year. Legs, that's the Western Conference, though. A lot of good teams, a lot of intrigue, but those were our 5 most interesting.
Can't wait to get this started. I think there's probably more teams worthy of talking about and more teams that are going to be intriguing early in the year to start the year in the Western Conference than we've ever had. So let's get to it.
Well, hit that like button for us, guys. Leave a comment. Let us know who your top 5 most interesting teams are. And don't forget, starting on October 14th, we're going to be back here right in the saddle, back with our 4 live shows a week, and you're not going to miss it. So hit that subscribe button. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. We'll see you next time.